Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the video. Today this is just going to be another short video just detailing how you can set up a kind of sprint. It's going to be cheap and dirty. It's not going to be, well, saying that, it's just a quick way that I introduce sprint into most of my games to start with. And it's just a simple case of increasing the maximum speed your character runs at and then resetting it back to what it was. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight in. What I've gone and done is I've gone and created a third person project, just a blank one. I've literally just pressed new and we're in here in the default scene. Essentially this would work almost identically for the FPS, and it will also work with any sort of other projects which you're using a character movement component. If you're not familiar with what that is, just follow along and hopefully um, you'll pick it up and you might be familiar with it. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we need to edit our character's blueprint. Now, if you have just started out a fresh template like I have, your first or third person character should be somewhere in the either in the scene or in the world outliner. If it's not, what you can do is if you go back to your main content folder. Now in the third person it's just a third person BP, and very similarly it says first person BP in the first person template. You want to go into the BP folder, then we want to head over to blueprint, and then we just want to go over to our third or first person character, or whichever character blueprint you are running on your project. Okay, so I'm just going to tag this onto the main window here. Okay, so now we're in the third person blueprint. We're just going to head over to the event graph, and this is where you'll see all your main blueprints. Now, if you've had a mess around with these before, you should know what they all are. We've got taking game input, which is your left analog, right analog, which controls your look and movement. Next, then we take mouse input, which is going to be your your view, or which way your character is going to move. Jump is just set to a standard space. Touch, obviously, if you're on a computer, it's going to take touch input, which is jump, I believe, at this point. Movement, that's going to be assigned to an axis, W, A, S, and D for movement, and then we've just got a reset VR if that's what we're working with. So they're the basics, but that we're going to add our own. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to straight off press comment, which is the C key on your keyboard, and I'm just going to write sprint. And I'm just going to make sure that we try and keep all of our blueprint inside this window. We can resize it obviously, but just to house it to start with. So, as I said at the beginning, we're going to be using the character movement sort of asset or component. Sorry, not asset. So this is the character movement component, which is a default with any character class. It's inherited into that, and that will be down at the bottom. And essentially, if you've got a character set up, you should see that, unless you're using a different system, like a pawn or something like that. So within the character movement component, there is on the right hand side, if you look at the details, there is some character movement walking sort of details, and one of them is the maximum walk speed. Now if I just press play, essentially my character is now running or walking in a sense at the max speed that it can go. So going back to the character movement controller, if I then increase this to 1000, not 100, 1000, and press play. Now, without a direct comparison, you might not notice a big difference, but we are definitely moving a little bit quicker. And again, if I exaggerate that, and if I set that actually to 2000, without a doubt, you're going to notice a difference now. And you can see now that we're just zipping around the map, and it's pretty difficult to control at this point. So, what I'm thinking is if we change this figure when we press, let's say, the shift key. So when the shift key is pressed, I want my max run speed or walk speed to be 1000, and then when I release the shift key, I want it to reset back to the 600 that it was before. And this can be done very simply. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do, you can either in the input manager, which is in the project settings, which to get to it you would go to edit and project settings. That would give you this. In the input manager, you can set up an action mapping for sprint under the shift, the keyboard. Sorry, under keyboard and left shift. Where is it? Down at the bottom, probably. Left shift. Yep. And then that would now let you. Let's call that sprint. If we go to our third person now and we type in sprint, we now get an input action for sprint. Alternatively, you don't have to go through that. You can just type in keyboard and then left and then shift, and you also get the same thing. It's just doing it this way. You've not actually you're not declaring, or you're not setting in the stand that shift is always for sprint. It just kind of leaves it open. There's no right or wrong way of doing that. I think some people would prefer to define that left shift is going to be sprint in the action mappings, but it is completely up to you. So there's a little bonus there if you didn't know that. So with the left shift, let's just change that to the sprint, because we've already made it now, haven't we? So let's just use that. So we're saying when we've pressed this button, we want the character movement component to set the maximum walk speed to double, maybe, or to 1000, or whatever figure that you would like. So what I'm going to do, I need to access this character movement component. So I'm just going to actually drag the component onto the blueprints board, and then that gives me this node which allows me to access any of this information. So essentially what we want to do is we want to set the max, spell it right, max walk speed. Okay, so when we press this, this is going to set my maximum walk speed of my character to 0. Now you could do it where you just say I want it set to 1000, and then if we come off this one more and then go to set max walk speed, and then what we do, we set it back to 600. Effectively, that's it. You're done. So if I'm running around now, it's 600. I press shift and now I'm running a bit faster, and then I let go and it goes back to. There you go. You've got a shift. Now, just so then that's clearly obvious, I'm going to set that to 2000, so it's pretty obvious. So at the moment we are at 600. Hit shift and we speed off, and then we let go of shift and we slow down. Press it again. Speed off. Speed off. Speed off. Yeah. Now, if you're happy with that, that's as simple as it needs to be, really. If you don't like hard coding this value in, what you can do is you can set a new variable called sprint speed. Now, essentially, you're still going to be hard coding it in a sense. However, you are controlling it a little bit with a variable. So you can have a sprint speed. Let's have a look. Of 1200. Let's drag this into that. So that's going to be my sprint speed. And then we can create another variable and then walk speed. Drag that in onto that one, and there we go. We've done the same thing again, but this time now we've got two variables. Now, obviously I set that to 1200 and I've set my walk speed. Actually, I didn't even give my walk speed a value, so that's why it was stopping me. I was wondering what I did there. So my walk speed's actually 600. And now that should work properly. Yeah, I let go and it just slows me down. That's another way of doing it. And what we could do, you can actually, if you click on this little button here, you're actually exposing the, you're actually making the instance editable. And if you expose it on spawn as well, let's click on that one, expose it on spawn, and compile. What you can actually do is you can click on your character in your game and just change this figure while while you're in the game. So if you go to what is it, Shift F1 and find your character somewhere. There we go. Let's change this now to 5,000, and then now it's mental. There you go. Shift F1, come back. Actually, that's terrible. Let's go back to 1200. Click back in the game, and you know what? That's a reasonable speed. Maybe a little bit too quick. So let's again edit that, and let's put it down to 1,000. Let's try that, and we're running, and then we're sprinting. And I think that looks more natural. So there you go, straight off the fly, by making the variables and making them exposed, you can then do some sort of debugging and fine tuning while you're playing the game. So I'm just going to exit out of that and then come out of the game. So that's where they are. So remember, you need to select your third person character, scroll down just to default, and that should be the variable names that you've set up. So mine sprint speed, walk speed, and you can set them however you like. Now let's you can expand on that a little bit. One of the things that sometimes I like to do is sometimes with certain characters and certain rigs, the sprint can look a little bit jittery, and I'll explain what I mean by that. If I just set these to something ridiculous, I need to set that a little bit lower. Hang on, I can do that. Not in that window. In this window, if I press player, I can select my guy, and I can change it here. If I set it to 100, and then if I sprint, so that's a walk, a sprint, a walk, a sprint. So the animations on this character are actually pretty good, but I'm trying to think of an. So I used to have an animal pack, and to go from a sprint and a walk on certain characters, the animation transition that went from walk to run, because of the sudden change in speed, the animation struggled to like transition straight into it, because in a sense I guess the animations weren't set up that well. But if you experience that and you do see some sort of jitteriness, it's because obviously as soon as you press shift, the speed's just being tripled or doubled instantly, almost immediately, and that can look, on certain characters that can look silly. And if you do experience that, this is kind of like a bonus for people who are using slightly different or custom characters, and that may experience this. What I like to do a bit of smoothing, and the way I do that, this probably isn't the best way to do it, but it's the way I've learned to do, and it's the way I continue to do it, because it works, and I've no reason to use a different way so far. So what I've got here is a timeline node. Now what that allows you to do is when it's activated, it plays well a timeline, and if you double click onto it, we'll be able to see what I mean. So at the moment, my timeline, I don't have one at the moment, and you can do various different timelines, like you can float, vector, events and color, and you can do all sorts of other stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a float track. Now I'm going to call my track sprint smoothing, and essentially I want to make the length probably about 0.25 seconds, and you'll see why I'm doing that in just a minute. And then I'm going to press shift and click, and that's going to create a point on the timeline for me. And I'm going to set the time to 0 and the value to 0. Okay, and then I'm going to press shift and click again to make a second node. This one is going to be at 0.25, and the value, select it again, and the value is going to be 1. Now if you click these two buttons, it'll reset the view to fit the full time framing. Now you've got these 2 points, but you can see that this line is going straight up. Now essentially, this is a curve of what sort of how it's going to get from 0 to 0.25. So, sorry, it's 0 to 1. So my scale's from 0, nothing, 1 to full. And when I press shift or whatever, it's just going to go boom straight to the top, and it's going to be no different from what it currently is. Because when I press shift, at the moment, what it does, it just goes straight from 0 to 1. It's not smooth; it's just a straight line, straight change, which is giving us our faulty animation in certain circumstances. What I actually want to do is I want to smooth this curve so it eases into it. Now what you need to do is, if you right click on these little diamonds, these nodes, is you want to select auto, and if you've noticed now, what it'll do, it'll slowly speed up and then slowly, not slow down, but it will ease in, it will gradually ease into this transition. Okay. Just bear with me a second, I'm getting a phone call. Okay, sorry about that. So essentially that's gonna gradually ease into this. So if we go back to our event graph now, what we're gonna see is sprint smoothing. There is our float track. Now, when we press the button, we want to play from the start of our timeline. And then when we've finished playing our timeline, we want to update our speed, but we don't want it to be just do this timeline, do absolutely nothing, and then just finish and set it anywhere. What we want to do is we want to linear interpolate, or lerp for short. We want to lerp between two speeds, if you will. So what we want is we want to go from our walk speed. Let's connect these up, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to disconnect that and disconnect that, and I'm going to switch these around because that looks confusing. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got a linear interpolate, and essentially what's going to happen, what a linear interpolate does is it transitions from one value to another. So essentially what it's going to do is it's going to transition from my walk speed to my sprint speed, and it does that transition based on a value. Now this value is, we can set it, so what it says here is 100% of A when the alpha is at 0 and 100% of B when the alpha is at 1. So if I just type in 1 here, essentially now it's just going to be sprint speed, and if I set it back to 0, it's going to be walk speed. Now we know our walk speed's 400 and we know our sprint speed's 2000, so we actually want to transition between the two. And people don't just go from a jog to a sprint instantly. It's not just an instant change. It's you speed up, you push a bit quicker with one foot, you push a bit quicker with the next foot, and you get to that top speed that you know, and that's what I kind of want to replicate. So, what we do, because we know our sprint smoothing is going to gradually increase from 0 to 1 over a time frame of 0.25 seconds, we know that that's going to smoothly transition between these two. So if we link up our timeline, once we've pressed the button, and we play from the start, we're going to transition from walk speed to sprint speed, and then we can set the output to our walk speed. So in fact, we don't need that. Now you're probably thinking, well, hang on, there's no transition for going back. Well, we want to actually reverse what we've done, and you know, luckily the timeline has a feature for that. I'm trying to neaten this up, but it's not working because I can't concentrate on two things at once. I can't speak and stuff. But so essentially, we want to do the opposite. We want to, when we release the key, we want to reverse from the end, and then when we've finished, we want to set that to this. And essentially that should work now. Thinking about it now, actually, I think I've got that wrong. I think I've got that the wrong way around. I think I want to have that on update, but you know, we'll see in a minute. So at the moment we're running around at 400. We hit shift, and then there we go. We speed into it, and then when we let go, we slow down. Ramp up to speed, slow down. So yeah, I think that is quite abrupt actually. So let's just try that again. Yeah, there you go. So I've used update instead, and it's mouse smoother. So you can see there. So I'm about to press the key. Pressed. It smooths into it, and then when you let go, you know, equally it smooths a bit down. Now, because I've set this obviously to 400 and 2000, I'd consider that an unnatural speed. It doesn't look right. We're travelling across the map a lot quicker than the actual animation's operating, so it's, you know, to me it's not right. So there you go. That's a little bit of smoothing. Now, if you have got, obviously, the effect isn't visible that much with this animation or the UE4 mannequin, because the animations are quite well set up, and the transition between the blending between the animations is actually really well done. But on certain characters, you do see it. So hopefully that was of some benefit for you. There's probably other ways of setting up a sprint. That's the way I do it. I yet haven't found a real problem with it. If you've got other systems built in, like for this one, you could have a crouch speed and stuff like that as well, and have exactly the same thing. So when you're crouched, it goes from your walk speed to a crouching speed, you know, and I guess as well you could do that with sort of, if you've got a flight system, you could control, you know, boost changes, so you're not like instantly boosting. Well, your instant boost you probably would want on a anyway, I'm getting too far into it, but yeah, I hope that was some benefit. If it was, you know, please let me know down in the comments. My videos are not that frequent, but you know, I'm planning on making it a little bit more frequent. I've got a little project going on at the moment, which once I know if it's possible to complete, you know, I'm probably going to do a video on it. Give me a like if you like what I'm posting. Consider subscribing, and you'll be kept up to date with what I do. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.